Hi, we want to welcome you to God's Supermarket with Gordo. Many people have asked me to run programs in Christchurch and up in Blenheim, helping people with gardening, and I think at this time it's a very practical skill that many of us need to learn. As our text at the beginning said from Psalms 104, He causes the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. Now, I believe that text is telling us where the real originator of food from the ground comes from. It's God, and we want to give him all the glory in what we're doing. But as people have been asking me to share some skills in gardening, we can't do it face to face anymore, so we decided, Kerry and I, that we're going to do some programs on the how-tos of gardening and also looking at what we do with the produce. And it's been an absolute blessing to us to be able to be out here and harvest this food. It's probably the wrong time of the year to be doing a gardening program, or to be starting one, because it's a harvest, it's autumn, we're coming into winter, but it's the pointy end of gardening, really. This is the good end. If you have a look at the display here, we've got everything from beetroot to grapes and fresh carrots and tomatoes, little cranberries. These are just beautiful little things growing in abundance. And what I want to be able to share with you is information over the series of programs on how, by putting in no more than 2 hours a week, once you're established, you can feed yourself, you can feed your family. And there's a lot of work, a bit of expense at getting set up, we want to talk about that. But once you've got your fruit trees and once you've got your vegetables established, your beds are done, it's actually not a lot of work. And many of us are afraid of gardening because we think, what a massive task to be able to produce food, and it seems like hard work. Most of it's in our minds. We don't actually know how easy it is. And so our first program, we're going to be looking at harvesting winter produce and what to put in for winter produce and how easy it is. One of the best things we suggest is these things here, pumpkins, growing them. We're going to do a little presentation today on how to grow pumpkins, the do's, the don'ts, and the harvesting, the storage. Now these are great. You can, just about anybody can grow these and keep themselves supplied for the winter with pumpkins. They are a very easy thing to grow. They take not a lot of care if you do the preparation right. You walk away, you come back months later, and here they are. And we're going to show you how that works. But all of this is what we're harvesting at this time of the year. The blackberries are coming in, and I believe God has a rotational system. The fruits that we grow seem to come in one after another. Behind me is feijoa bushes, and up here near the hills, the feijoas are much later than down home, down in Canterbury, in Christchurch, and on the flat near the sea level. So these babies are going to be ready in maybe another month or even 2. But I'm hopefully going to show you feijoas this big off this bush behind me. It's a mammoth, because feijoa is all the way through here. So this isn't just a display of shrubbery and trees that give a nice ambience to the place, which they certainly do behind the lawn, but it's food producing as well. And I just think it's so important that we start producing our own food in the time in which we're living. And I want to have the privilege of being able to help you learn how to produce some food for your family and for yourselves, for you and your wife, you and your husband, if there's just a couple of you, and that you might all have the privilege of having your own God's supermarket, because none of this came in a plastic bag. This was all harvested. Kerry and I harvested this in just a few minutes, just prior to doing this shoot. So this is our blessing from a little bit of work earlier on, a lot of work at the beginning, some years back, a little bit of work through the week, once a week, just find an hour or 2, and then you can enjoy this blessing as well. Today we're going to focus on pumpkins, and we're going to focus on these things now. If you speak Afrikaans, you will recognise this instantly. This is a South African gem squash, and as part of our program today, we're going to show you what to do with these. We're going to show you how to harvest them and how to grow them, but we're also going to show you how to prepare them and eat them. The good thing about both pumpkins and gem squash is you can grow a whole lot of them, you harvest them, and they last. Unlike the tomatoes and the grapes and the blackberries that you need to use fairly much straight away when you harvest them. The pumpkins, the gem squash, and some other things that we'll show you a bit later either store in the ground or they last for a while, and then you can use them through the winter. So if you grew 20 pumpkins, that would be enough for your family for quite a staple diet through the winter. And some of these babies, good thing about both pumpkins and gem squash is that they can be used as a savoury meal, or they can be used as a dessert. Some of my South African friends tell me these things, they put cinnamon in them and stir them up and make a dessert out of them. So that's it. This is autumn harvest in God's great supermarket. God bless you. This is an example of another really good winter crop that you can grow. These down here are yams, and I don't know that it's possible to not like yams. Beautiful, steamed, roasted, put in stir fries, myriad of ways that you can use them. These are a fairly easy care plant as well. You put them in the ground, and apart from a bit of moulding them up, you can forget about them. The only thing with yams, you need to make sure that you grow them in the same spot every year, because you can't get rid of them. A bit like their neighbours over here, and in the bed next door to it, we have these huge tall things here. These are Jerusalem artichokes. They grow into the ground like a potato, but they grow these massively high flower stems, up to over 10 foot in the air. To give you an idea of how tall they really are, I'm going to get Kerry to come into the picture and we'll get a real understanding of what these plants are all about. Now, Jerusalem artichokes are just an amazing long-keeping vegetable in the ground. When you dig them, you use them like a potato. So let's follow Kerry into this part of God's supermarket. We're going to go into the glass house. The one thing about this time of the year is that the garden doesn't look its best. At the end of the season it doesn't look its best, but it's producing the best. So when it's time to harvest, everything starts to die back. A lot of the plants, the summer and spring plants, have been done away with. You notice in the glass house we've got a stone pathway. That's to keep the heat in. That heats up with the sunlight. And then in the evening the heat is kept here. This is of course where all of the grapes are grown. Along here, this is where our grapes come from. And I'll just show you something down here. There's an amazing product. It's like walking through the jungle here. You're like David Attenborough. These things here, I'll give you a close-up. These are cherry guavas. When they turn yellow, they are absolutely delicious. I'm not sure whether you can see that, but we're going to have hundreds of them in another few weeks' time to harvest. So that's some winter fruit. Very good if you've got a glass house to grow these in, or even down on the flat. And anywhere above Christchurch, these will grow outside perfectly. Through the back there, you'll notice that there's a little mandarin tree with mandarins on it. Having a glass house is not essential in many places, but up here where we live it's totally essential. Now let's go and have a look at the tomatoes. We grow several varieties of tomato. Kerry's picking a large one there. They're really good to spread on your toast, and this time of the year tomatoes are in abundance. We love to grow these ones. These are the sweet 100s. As the name suggests, they're very sweet, and you get hundreds on a bush. This time of the year you look after your plants through the spring and the summer, and then at the end we just let them go. We just let them go crazy, and they produce hundreds and hundreds of these delectable little tomatoes. See them all through there. Beautiful little cherry sweet 100s. Beautiful. So as I say, this is possibly the most rewarding time of the year for your gardening, when you're harvesting. So here we go. This is our pumpkin patch. Growing pumpkins is one of the easiest things you can do, and one of the most economical things, because you can provide a lot of food through the winter. All you need for pumpkins is a wee bit of area. Doesn't need to be huge. We've got a massive amount here, but we designate this for growing pumpkins and growing our gem squash. All you need is somewhere where you can have an area about that round, maybe 30 centimetres across, fill it with humus and compost and a bit of fertiliser, just a lot of organic matter. Pumpkins like to have their feet a bit wet, and they don't mind how mushy the soil is. The more you can put in there, the better. And then you just let them grow. They just need an area to spread. So they only take that much for the roots, and then you would just let them grow up a fence, up trees. They can grow anywhere. They'll grow over the lawn. The one thing you need to remember with them is that you need to suppress the weeds. You can do that by putting down cardboard or carpet or black polythene, anything to stop the weeds coming up, because you can't weed through them. They just take over the whole area, and then you would find that the weeds are going to get really huge and seed, and the whole thing's counterindicative of having a good garden. So suppress the weeds. Now you might notice that this is all looking a bit dead behind me. This is the beauty of growing pumpkins. You put them in, when the weeds are suppressed, you plant them and forget them. You know, if you've mulched the ground like we do, we haven't watered these once for the entire summer. You just leave the ground, leave them, walk away, and you come back, and when the frost has killed them off like it has here, some of you that might go for a drive in the country will notice commercial pumpkin patches where there's an entire paddock and it's all green, covered in a beautiful green sea of foliage, and then all of a sudden you go out there and it's all dead, and then a few weeks later all you can see is pumpkins lying all over the paddock, and that's all you have to do. Once they've been killed off by the frost, you just go out there and harvest them. But there is a right way of harvesting, and I want to just share you some tips on how to harvest and how to store. And one of Kerry's Cooking with Plants programs, she's going to show you how to do some amazing stuff with pumpkin. So let's go on to harvesting. So here we are in the pumpkin patch, about to start our harvesting. Just want to share some more insights on growing the pumpkin in the first place. I couldn't reiterate enough that this is one of the easiest things for you to learn to do gardening with. That's going to give you a big return. Not a lot of work involved, and you're going to get a lot of food and a lot of nutritional value for the winter time. When it comes to harvesting, when it comes to planting, you just plant in the spring, but there's one thing you need to be aware of. You notice how that leaf is all withered. That's because of the frost. One thing that you'll just maybe want to share a few more insights into planting your pumpkin. So you plant your pumpkin in the springtime, but make sure that the danger of frost is past. Because if that's what's going to happen to a mature leaf, imagine what would happen to a young plant. And there's nothing worse than putting your pumpkins out and then finding a frost comes in end of October, November. So you can put them in as late as almost Christmas. So long as your ground is well prepared, and then they will just take off and grow. And I couldn't reiterate enough just the value and the ease of growing these things. So when it comes to harvesting, there's a couple of tricks. Well, actually, before that, I just want to show you the soil here. This is what we've done. This used to be a big glass house, and so over the years we put good soil down, a lot of sawdust at the beginning, and then each year we just lay down more and more of this, and then you get down to the soil underneath, and you got this lovely friable soil that is just built up with the rotting down of all the organic matter over the years. But that's underneath all of the leaves, so the weeds don't come up through it. But the pumpkins love it. But you, as you recall, I said you only need to grow an area about that big. That's not grow that. You only need to cultivate an area that big. Fill it with humus, fill it with compost, fill it with organic material, and then your pumpkin will grow on that. And then the tendrils will just go for yards and yards, meters and meters and meters. When it comes to harvesting, we'll just get the camera around here. You'll notice that they're connected. Cut these vines out of the way. They're connected to a vine, and there's often a junction, another vine coming off the side. What you do is cut the vines off either side of it. It's important to leave the stalk. They will last longer if you keep that stalk attached. I like to leave a piece of the main vine connected. Leave it like that. That will dry up, but that will help them to last. And so these things will keep right through to next spring, even to Christmas. We did them up till Christmas from last year. So you just go around and each one just just cut either side, cut the leaf off, and that's your pumpkin. You just go around, and then, so it will probably take you, if you grow 4 or 5 pumpkin plants, it'll probably take you an hour of time to prepare the holes that you're going to plant them in, and maybe an hour if you're putting mulch down. This has taken years to build up, but if you just want to buy some bark, put it down, and you can grow them the good thing about them, you can grow them in a shrubbery, in an area that's ornamental, and just let them go, and then later on you'll rip them out. And so maybe 2 hours work at the beginning in spring, and then in 10 minutes you might harvest 20 or 30 pumpkins. What could be easier than that? When it comes to storage, make sure they've got the stalk on. If you snap the stalk off, some of them may snap off while you're harvesting. Those are the ones that you use first. And just keep an eye on them. And when you store them, do not store them flat like that. You store them on their edge. If you set them up like that, they will last much longer. They'll go through the winter. Make sure they're dry when you put them away. Put them in a place where they're not going to get direct frost and direct sunlight on them. Just a cool, dry place is what's recommended. And some people put them up in the roof of their shed. That's a really good place to store them, nice and dry. And yeah, happy pumpkin pie. Okay, all pumpkins are members of the squash family. It doesn't matter whether they're butternuts, buttercups, whonga crowns, all of the different types of pumpkin. Those big orange ones, they're all what are known as squash. My favourite by a country mile is these things here. These are called South African gem squash. We already mentioned them at the beginning. We're going to be focusing on them today. Picking them, harvesting them is very similar. They grow on a vine, and what you do is you just pull your vine up, I often hack the vines to bits because you've got to get rid of them, and all you need to do is leave some stalk on to make them last. I would recommend growing some of these. You probably won't be able to buy some seed, but I know that they sell them at Countdown. So they sell these normally for $2.50 each. Don't think, well, that's a lot to pay, because what you're doing, you're buying an entire garden for that $2.50. So get yourselves one of these at Countdown or at a supermarket if you happen to see them, South African gem squash. Buy them, and then later on we're going to show you how to keep the seed. You keep the seed, and the following year you put the seed in, and you'll have heaps of these, and they're well worth growing. They're absolutely delicious. One thing I would recommend is using a glove when you're doing the harvesting of the gem squash, because they have a tendency to have some prickles on the vines, on the stems themselves. So this is it. That's all there is to harvesting, and it's a fun time of the year. So here we have it, the squash harvest. What we're looking at here is the results of 2 hours, at the most 3 hours work in propagation, in planting and harvesting. We've got 28 pumpkins, about 120 gem squash grown in the patch for the year, and that was less than we would normally grow. I haven't had that much time this year to do it, but it just shows you how simple it is to produce a lot of food. 28 pumpkins is one in a week for over 6 months. And when you consider these bad boys here, these are $2.50 each minimum at the supermarkets when you can buy them. So if you multiply 120 by $2.50, that's not a bad hourly rate to grow some food. You know that it's organic, it's healthy, and there's something special about going out to God's supermarket and picking up your own produce and knowing that He's had a hand in it. So when you come to eat it, you truly give thanks, because you're more mindful of the God whose hand is behind the growth. Next thing we're going to do is teach you how to prepare and eat a gem squash. Okay, here we are. It's time to cook one of our gem squash. These things are like little cannonballs. They're super hard. All you need when you're cooking one of these, I'm right into simplicity of cooking. I love economy when it comes to every aspect, and especially time when it comes to cooking. I like economy of time. These things are so simple, there's not a whole lot to do with them. You simply knock the stalk off, the back. Now all you need is a pot of water with about 2 centimetres of water in the bottom of the pot. You need a skill saw or a hacksaw or a chainsaw if you've got one handy to get into these things. So the hardest thing about these is getting into them. What I find really to be the best is a heavy serrated bread knife. If you're using a really sharp knife, it can be a bit dangerous. It doesn't work so well. One of those little veggie knives, Victorinox ones, Swiss Army knife ones, they work, but the best is a really solid bread knife. So what you do is you take your gem squash, put it on a board and just cut it in half. That's what it looks like on the inside. Sort of like a pumpkin. Then you'll need a spoon. Just take an ordinary spoon and just scoop the seeds out. Some of my South African friends tell me they eat them seeds and all. But I always take the seeds out. So then you end up with this hollowed out gem squash. And in here you've got hundreds of seeds. You can separate those out, dry them out, and that's your seed for the following year. So you do the both halves. Scoop them out. I give them a bit of a wash in case there's any sawdust from the chainsaw left on them. And then you just get the pot boiling, drop them in the pot, 3-4 minutes, and that's all there is to it. And we'll show you what you do with them then when we're finished. That's it. What could be easier than that? And it's a beautiful breakfast, good for lunch, and really good stuffed for a main meal. So this is the good part. This is where you get to sample the rewards of working with God and producing food in your garden. We get to eat it. So here we have gem squash. The good thing about these things is that they come with their own little container. The shell stays hard after you cook them, so you just eat straight out of the shell. You can mix up any little stir fry, some rice with some veggies, anything you like, and fill these up. You can have them stuffed. They're really nice like that. I'm not telling you this, but the South Africans, their standard way is having butter and salt. We would not recommend using butter. It's the way people eat corn here in New Zealand. We don't recommend that. All I recommend is a little bit of herb salt tipped into sprinkled on top of them, and they're absolutely delectable. Bon appetit, and next year you can be enjoying the fruits of your labours when you harvest your gem squash as well. God bless you. So there we have it. That's our first in our God's Supermarket series of programs. We've talked about harvesting, but we need to be talking about planting, and the next program is going to be called God's Power, and how you can work with God's power in putting food in that you can harvest through the winter time. We look forward to seeing you then. God bless you, and happy gardening.